Okay. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for coming out to our the Finance Committee's community meeting tonight. Appreciate all of you here and anyone who's watching online. And I'm just going to my name is Eileen Birmingham. I'm a member of the Finance Committee, also the Second Ward Councilor. And just very quickly, our agenda for the evening, I'm going to do some introductions, talk about our fiscal foundation here in Montclair, and then Manager Marks is going to walk us through some budget considerations coming up, and then the reevaluation, a high-level overview of it. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. You can see the members of our Finance Committee up here. We have Mayor Dr. Renee Baskerville, myself, Councilor Rahum Williams, Deputy Manager Brian Scantleberry, Manager Marks, and we do have also, as part of our team, now the acting CFO, Joe Manzo and Joe Coons, who are both have been involved in municipal finance, both of them for decades, and they're helping us during this period of transition. Okay, so I'm going to just run through some slides, and I don't intend to take very much time, but I do want to sort of go through some of the things that we need to understand about Montclair. And I do want to just take a moment to acknowledge that this is a really difficult time, I think, in our town's history with things that are going on in our school district and other pressures that we're facing. And so I just wanted to run through a few things, and I'm going to apologize in advance. Some of my slides are kind of wonky and lots of detail and sort of violate some of the rules of PowerPoint, but I will go through them as we go. But even before I do, I want to make sure that, and Mayor, I know you're with me on this. I want to make sure almost every time we have a public meeting that we talk about the property tax relief programs that are available in New Jersey, because if you are eligible for these programs, it really will behoove you to take advantage of them, but you do need to apply for them generally, especially the senior citizen programs. So right now, we are waiting for them to announce the details of the 2026 program. But I do want to just say, I just want to put this out there to make sure that people are aware that these programs exist. The eligibility has been expanding year over year, and so just want to put that out there to make sure that you check for your eligibility for these programs. Okay, so I'm going to start with just a brief overview of New Jersey property taxes, and going to start with the top box. They are among the highest in the nation, and I believe we have actually now officially made it to the highest in the nation. In 2025, the state average in New Jersey was $10,570, and in Montclair, we were $22,717. So that's sobering, I think, for all of us, and a lot of what I'm going to say is fairly sobering. But and a lot of this is some of this is sort of basic, but I do want to just kind of go through a lot of it so we're all on the same page. We now have 3 separate major taxing authorities, and this is the School and Board of Education. We're in a Type 2 district now. The municipal government, and part of it the library will get by statute. And then we have the County Board of Commissioners that also taxes us. And each of these bodies is generally subject to a 2% levy cap. The municipality has an additional appropriations cap. Typically, a referendum is required when you want to exceed the levy cap, except there are some exceptions. And just in terms of how this operates, the county, each of these separate taxing authorities sends into the county, the budget that they need. The county confirms the tax rate. The municipality is responsible for collecting the taxes. So you will see on our budget that we have a reserve for uncollected taxes because we are dispersing the money out. Okay, so New Jersey has a relatively progressive tax structure. So we have a graduated income tax. So the higher your income, the higher percentage of your tax of your income you're paying. We have a moderate sales tax, and it's been at 6.625% for several years now. And just want to point out that the general sales tax in New Jersey goes all to the state. And then there are limited local excise taxes. And state aid in New Jersey to municipalities is based on a fairly progressive formula. And essentially, less aid is going to towns that are aggregately wealthy. And these are calculations that are done at the state level every year. And this has, and I'll just show you a little bit of this, it has a major impact on school financing and property taxes. And we are now, the School Funding Reform Act of 2008 is what dictates the aid that different municipalities will get. And it is based on, I'm not going to go into it too much, but it is based on formulas where they calculate the need and then use the wealth of a municipality to sort of determine how much every town is getting. It's important to understand that in New Jersey, they're using equalized wealth when they do these calculations. And what that means essentially is we have our assessed value of property in Montclair, which is about $7.2 billion when we look at the assessed value. But the state every year is looking at how much your houses are selling for, and then they equalize that over the state. So they'll tell us, well, your housing is assessed at your property is assessed at 7.2 billion, but we think our calculations suggest that it's closer to 12 billion is our equalized value. So that's what they're using when they're talking about how much aid they're going to give us. It also determines how much money we have to give to the county as a municipality. So these are just things, again, to keep in mind. So just in the context of New Jersey then, these equalized property values in Montclair have been increasing over time, and especially post-pandemic. And that's mostly been driven by an increase in the value of residential property. So the value of commercial property in Montclair is less than 10% of the rateable tax base. And that's similar to towns like Glen Ridge and Westfield. And I'll show you some other examples, but just if you go home with nothing, just know that Montclair is not a commercial, and we've known this for a long time, but I think people may falsely think that there's sort of commercial ratables. But in fact, we are very similar to Glen Ridge, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the other thing, again, back to the equalized wealth, we are wealthy enough that our state aid is now down to less than 10% of our school budget. And that, again, is similar to towns like Glen Ridge and Westfield. And for people who may have lived in Montclair for a long time, this is very different. So back in the late 70s, Montclair was getting 30% or more of its budget from the state. And it has just gone down over the years, and particularly with the new formula. But just the take home is when you have 10%, less than 10% commercial ratables, and you need to fund almost all of your school district, this becomes very expensive for residential taxpayers. Which is not to say, just let me be clear, that commercial taxpayers and apartment buildings are not also paying high taxes. It's just that residential taxpayers, again, when we look at the metrics in New Jersey, residential taxpayers are the typical ones that are used, and for residential taxpayers in Montclair, it's high. So apologies for this slide, but just to show you, the red line there is Montclair, and this is 2020, and you can see that the value, this is the rest of New Jersey combined, and the value in Montclair, it's a much steeper slope and obviously a much higher line there. So again, back to what I said earlier, people, I think you will naturally think Glen Ridge and Montclair. You're going to look at Glen Ridge and think, oh, there's far fewer commercial ratables in Glen Ridge. And in fact, they're very similar, as you can see. A lot of this is driven by Glen Ridge has smaller but higher value properties. So the hospital, Mountainside Hospital, is actually a major taxpayer in Glen Ridge. And so that hospital sits on the border, but the tax money goes to Glen Ridge and for the hospital. And so this is, again, just to be aware of. And these are just some examples that I pulled. Verona is similar to Montclair. You can see, as you might expect if you've visited Paramus, that Paramus is very, very commercial dense. West Caldwell has like a surprising amount of industrial properties there in terms of their tax base. Again, Clifton, as you might expect, also more heavily commercial than Montclair. So this is, again, just to show. And not only is Montclair an 85% residential tax base, this is getting into the weeds here, but we have a relatively small number of residential properties. So Montclair, just to use these two as an example, Montclair has 9,600 residential properties. Livingston, which has about 10,000 fewer people, actually has over 10,000 residential properties. So again, so you have it. We need to pay 85% of the tax base, and it's a smaller divisor than other towns. Now, and another major structural issue in New Jersey is that New Jersey relies very heavily on property tax for local tax revenue. So if you live in New York, general sales tax at your local mall or your local restaurants actually part of it will stay local. And so I remember having a conversation with my mother, who lives in Rockland County, and she said, well, what do you mean? You have all these restaurants. Like, don't you get tax revenue from all those restaurants? And in fact, in New Jersey, all of that goes to the state, and none of it stays local. And so you don't have kind of a commensurate relationship with, like if your commercial properties are busy, you don't really get sales tax revenue from, as you might in other states. Massachusetts, for example, has a meal tax. So they have a 1%. Every time someone, spends $100 on a meal, the town gets $1. So you can imagine in Montclair that would add up, but it's not really allowed. In Connecticut, they tax your car. There are other ways, but in New Jersey, you can see it's very solidly property tax. So I'm not going to talk about the schools very much today, but I do want to just, again, go back to this the formula and the equalization and just so you can picture what it looks like. This is Montclair here. And all of these school districts, Kearney actually has fewer kids in their district, but you can see, this is post-pandemic, that a district like Kearney, the state actually wound up giving them quite a bit more money. And similarly, other towns. But Montclair, the state aid has stayed very flat. And of course, expenses are not staying flat, but this is sort of how state aid is going. And then just to give you a really big example, and this is literally, you have to change the scale here, but the way that the funding formula works, Newark is wealthier than Montclair in the aggregate. But of course, there are more students there that are considered higher risk. So you basically have a situation where the tax levy expected from Newark is almost the same as what Montclair is is paying, and the state is giving them $1.2 billion in aid for their school district, whereas Montclair obviously is not getting anywhere close to that. So you can just see like 85% of their budget is coming from the state, and that makes a big difference in how property taxes work. The other thing to know in terms of pressures facing municipalities, the energy receipts tax is something that the state has been sort of taking from municipalities for a long time. And the way it used to work was that utilities would pay for right away, like they would pay for and they would pay it to each individual town. And then starting several decades ago, the state said, you know what, we'll collect it all and we'll give it back to you to make it easy for the, more convenient for the utilities. Over the years, of course, the state has needed it. They need it for other reasons. So they've just stopped giving a lot of it back. And just an example, like in 2007, we received about $4.5 million. If we were even just to put that into inflation, we would be getting over $7 million from the state. But instead, we've been stuck at around $3 million for almost 10 years now. So again, the aid is not keeping up with expenses. And it changed again to a needs-based, more needs-based, and so Montclair is kind of not going to get much more. Although I will say there is advocacy effort from municipalities and the New Jersey League of Municipalities to have the state sort of give the municipalities back what they're supposed to be getting. So that is an effort going on now. And then just one more thing to say about things that Montclair faces is our county tax. Again, because of this equalized formula, Montclair is paying in Essex County some of the highest county taxes. And you can see here that currently the average taxpayer, residential taxpayer in Montclair is paying about $1,500 more than in Verona. And part of that is because housing is more valuable here. But even for property that's assessed at the same value, Montclair taxpayers are paying more. And you can see just over time, since 2016, Montclair's has gone up about $600 and Verona's has stayed flat. So this is just another thing in Montclair that residential taxpayers are paying. So this is a very busy slide, but I just want to show you sort of take homes that if you look at Montclair versus Kearney here, they have similar populations. Montclair has a few more kids in their district. But you can see here, Kearney has a bigger commercial and industrial combined tax base compared to Montclair. And we're spending similar amounts of money, right? Like they're not that different. But Montclair is getting about $15 million in state aid, and Kearney's getting over $100 million in state aid. So when you combine the idea that you have commercial property paying a bill plus all this state aid, and you just do some dividing, the average taxpayer in Kearney is paying $13,000 a year. And again, this is 2024, so it was $21,000 a year. But again, just to show you sort of how this math works. And you can see Wayne, again, has a pretty big commercial sector. So they're paying less. Westfield, less so. And they also have, they're paying most of their school, but they have a $53 million municipal budget. And we're at 94 million. So again, they're still paying a lot because they have to pay for their school like we do. But you can see they keep their municipal budget a little bit trimmer. Okay, I'm almost done. So I just want to point out two things that, again, these are things that have unfolded over time that really put pressure here in Montclair. The one is the mismanagement of New Jersey's pension system, which started in the 1990s and has really resulted in an increasing pension burden in future years, which means now. And they were basically kicking the can down the road for a long time. The other is the state health insurance for local employers, which is kind of the standard in New Jersey, and of which we, until recently, were a member. But that also has been poorly managed with some limit, and so there's been limited attempts to control costs, and that's really wound up quite expensive. So just very quickly, in the early 90s, New Jersey had a well-funded pension system. And then you started with using money from that pension system to pay other bills. You started investing money from the pension system, which did not do well. You just stopped paying into the pension fund. And essentially now New Jersey has one of the most poorly funded pension systems in the country. And that we hear a lot about that at the state level. We hear a lot. Are they going to make the pension payment? Are we going to? What we don't hear a lot about, in my opinion, which I think is underappreciated, is the impact of this mismanagement on municipalities. Because by statute in New Jersey, municipalities have to pay the pension bill. We don't have the choice to say, I'm going to skip it this year. We have to be paying it. And so this is from our ratings in 2021, where they were just assessing our our pension liability. And in 2021, we had $117 million unfunded in the PFERS, the police and firemen system. And then in the public employees, we had a $67.4 million in net pension liability, meaning this was money that should have been paid into the pension system a long time ago, or a pension system depends on long-term growth, right? Like that's critical. And essentially, because it wasn't paid in and the state wasn't paying into it, there's a lot of catch-up money that needs to be paid. And so this is from our 2025 pension bill. And what you can see here is if we were just paying normal pensions, we would be paying about $2.5 million, just normal pension. But because of this mismanagement of the system, we have to pay an additional $5.3 million into PFERS for the unfunded liability. Think about what Montclair could do with $5.3 million every year. But this is a requirement, and this is not going away anytime soon. This is years and years and years that we're going to be paying $5 million. And I will say there's uncertainty, of course, because you don't know how markets are going to do. You don't know. New Jersey has its own structural issues. We don't know what's going to happen. There's uncertainty in what will happen. But these are defined benefit plans, so we will always be sort of beholden to the actuaries who will be telling us sort of what we need to pay. And this is the public employees, and you can see if it was a normal cost, $403,000, but instead we have an additional 1.8 for a total of 2.6. So just to add that up, we're paying over $7 million every year for money that should have been paid decades ago. And that's our current liability. And we will be paying this many years into the future. And just on to the health benefits. This is Governor Murphy right before he left talking about how it's in a death spiral. You have premiums going up and up and up. And any town that can get out of it is getting out of it. So you basically now have adverse selection, where it's the towns that need more resources are the ones in it, because of course insurance pools really need both healthy and sick to be healthy. And so we have a health insurance plan in a death spiral, and this is just the report that the total cost of providing health care on average for each member is approximately 60% higher than the national average. And again, this is something that the state could have done something different, and they didn't, and the municipality has to deal with it. So I don't know who remembers those commercials. It's not your fault. It's not our fault, but it is our problem. And this is, and so this here, because this was the projection, is just that it's gonna go up, 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 and up, and the premiums in the health plan were just gonna keep going up. So this is why we opted to exit the health insurance plan, and why we have a new carrier this year with Aetna, because of these kind of projections in the health benefit plan. So just to, like, how this all comes together, of course, is like, again, and I just want to say, like, this is nobody's fault. Like, this is not anybody's fault. It is not any comment on any employees or anything. It is just the reality is that in 2000, again, because of the pension mess, like, there was no required pension contribution for, and this is these are public safety employees generally. There was no, and healthcare was about $10,000 a year for, and so even inflation adjusted, you can see that what has happened is these costs have even made it so we're almost reaching double per employee. Salaries have stayed. It's not salaries again that are driving this. Pension now into the PFERS is required at over 36% of salary you have to be paying in, and family health insurance is reaching $60,000 a year. So again, these are just really difficult things that municipalities, and particularly Montclair, so I will just say, like, the number that I showed here, this number here, for a town of 40,000 people, this is one of the highest numbers that you're going to see in terms of $5.3 million. And I do think if other towns were dealing with this in a similar way, we would have more action at the state level, just because more towns would be kind of outraged about it. But again, this is Montclair's issue, and it is something that we will be dealing with. So just to wrap up here, this is sort of our fiscal reality. In New Jersey is a tax system that requires Montclair to pay for schools and the municipality with little state aid, and mostly coming from property taxes. Montclair is a heavily residential tax base with a relatively small number of residential properties relative to population. And costs for Montclair have increased well beyond general inflation, and a lot of it is driven by health insurance and pensions. And again, this was at the state level beyond municipal control, but again, it's municipalities that have to deal with it. And this is, we have another committee that deals with this, but the other thing really facing Montclair right now is we have aging infrastructure that's going to require resources. So this is sort of a rhetorical question, but really the intro to our manager is, these are really fiscal realities. And again, these are not the same that were present 20 years ago. We really have evolved. It's evolved in a way where we have real pressures that we didn't have even 15 years ago. And with everything, when things are changing, you have to sort of adapt. And this is sort of a, just thinking, how can we adapt to these fiscal realities? But I do want to introduce our manager, who one of the reasons that I was glad we could nab him is he has experience. He's been the manager in Kearney and the manager in Hoboken, both of which have very different economic structures. And one of the reasons I put Kearney up there is I think you can see that the pressures facing Kearney are going to be different than Montclair. But our manager, I think, is very adept at figuring out how to adapt to these realities. So I'm going to turn it over to him now, because he's going to talk a little bit more in specific about our budget this year.
Thank you. Okay, great. Can I use this too? Yep. Okay. So, good evening, everybody. My name is Stephen Marks. I'm the township manager. Today is February 12th, and it's the meeting of the Finance Committee. So, just yesterday in the Star Ledger or NJ Online, there was an article about New Jersey property taxes. And it actually listed, there's 565 towns in New Jersey, and it actually listed every town by average property taxes for 2025 and before. And Montclair actually was number 13 of 565 towns for how high its property taxes are. So this is a snapshot of last year's budget, 2025, just to give you an idea. Out of every tax dollar, approximately 58% of your property taxes go towards the schools. Approximately 15% or 15 cents on every dollar goes to the county. Less than 25 cents out of every property tax dollar here in Montclair goes to the township or the municipal government. And then a small portion, 3.88 million, goes to the library. So one point to drive home, because a lot of people want their elected officials in the town to lower taxes because the taxes here are so crushingly high. If we were to eliminate the entire municipal government, if we laid off every police officer, firefighter, DPW worker, everybody, and just eliminated the municipal government, your taxes would only go down by about $5,000 on the average property tax bill. That's not going to happen. Nobody's suggesting that. But the municipal portion of the tax bill is less than 25%. So last year, July 9th, New Jersey Department of the Treasury released its state health benefits plan rates for 2026. So it gave us a little less than 6 months to really prepare for the 2026 calendar year. So as Eileen said, the state health benefits plan for local governments was going up by 36.5%. We spend approximately $10 million on employee health benefits. That would have been close to a $4 million increase in the township's line item for employee health benefits. The future increases in 27 and 28 and 29 were going to be projected to be more than 36.5%. They were projected to be 50%, 60%. So it's not so much saving money for 2026, but avoiding even higher increases for the out fiscal years, the 27 and 28. So the town left the state health benefits plan. We went with a fully insured Aetna plan, but there was really only a small incremental savings between the state health benefit for this calendar year and this fiscal year budget. There was a relatively small savings between the state health benefits plan and the Aetna fully insured plan. So having realized that there were significant cost increases coming for 2026, in September, I gave a directive to the department heads that we were going to institute a hiring freeze on non-essential employees. And then we were also, by state statute, all the department heads in this form of government are to provide their budget requests to the township manager in November every year. So I gave the department heads charge of providing 3 budget scenarios. One being a status quo or the wish list budget. One being a frozen budget where they weren't to request more than they got for 2025. And then the third budget scenario was a 5% reduction budget. So we conducted the budget hearings, the departmental budget hearings, over a 2-day period in November, and each department head presented their budget scenarios. Everything that we do as a municipal government with regard to budget and finance is governed by the state of New Jersey. So the state of New Jersey Division of Local Government Services and the State Department of Community Affairs provides guidance on municipal budget making. They came out last year with Local Finance Notice 2025-19, which basically reiterates that the all municipalities have a 2% cap on their tax levy and approximately a 2.5% cap on their appropriations. There are several budget documents that you don't start the year on day one, on January 1st, with a budget for the entire calendar year. Typically, municipalities will introduce a temporary budget the first meeting in January. It's typically by state statute, 26.25% of your previous year's budget. Besides that, before you could craft and introduce a budget for the full calendar year, you have to complete 2 things: an annual debt statement and an annual financial statement. So this is just an example of the annual debt statement that was prepared and submitted to the state earlier this year. So we've gone through, unfortunately, we've gone through 4 chief financial officers in the last 9 months. So Joe Monzo, who has 40 years of experience as a chief financial officer from South Brunswick, and he worked at the Division of Local Government Services, is currently acting as our temporary CFO. He is with Phoenix Advisors, who is the town's financial advisor. So he's in the midst of preparing the annual financial statement, which is what this would look like. So we are looking at every department in terms of economy and efficiency to see that every tax dollar that is being spent in every department is absolutely necessary. So this is an example, a recent study that the town completed, and we will be looking at each and every department. This was also, I only put this here because there was a memo that I prepared to the fire chief regarding the fire department. I understand it's been broadly circulated on Facebook and on the internet, and I just wanted to make it part of the record here. This is a temporary measure until further notice, and this is basically putting into effect some cost-saving measures for each department. So we did a 5-year look back for general municipal revenues. So I don't expect everybody to look at this or be able to read it. This presentation will be available online, so for anybody who's interested, these numbers will be here. But essentially for revenues, there are 5 or 6 different pots of money, funding sources that municipalities rely on. One is local revenues, which include fees, fines, and permits that come from the municipal court and ABC licenses. A second that Eileen mentioned before is state aid. Montclair receives approximately $5.5 million from New Jersey Energy Receipts Tax. Next category is construction code fees. Those are your fees that come in from building permits. That was about $3 million in 2025. Next is shared service agreements. We have an agreement with Glen Ridge, Cedar Grove, and Glen Ridge for fire services, Cedar Grove, Verona, and West Caldwell for health services, and the Board of Education for school resource officer. Next, we get various state and federal grants that you have to account for. And then finally, there's category G is pilot payments. So any developer who has a financial agreement with the town involving a redevelopment plan, they are still, even if they receive a tax abatement, they are still making a payment in lieu of taxes. So the category G covers pilot payments, things like your cable TV franchise fee, a hotel tax, even cannabis. The money coming in from, or expected to come in from cannabis, that was approximately $9 million for that category. And then the rest basically comes from your local property taxes. So in 2025, we anticipated the $62.5 million from local property taxes. This is what that looks like in a graph. The vast majority of the monies coming in for the municipality for municipal purposes is $62.5 million from property taxes. Next slice of the pie is the pilots I just mentioned. Surplus is something that you end it's basically your fund balance, money left over at the end of each year that you could then repurpose and anticipate for the following year. So last year we anticipated using $8 million in surplus. And then we are still paying, believe it or not, there is type 1 school debt that Montclair has been paying from when the school district was a type 1 district. So the township of Montclair still has debt service on the books. And in 2025, we were paying $7.7 million in school debt service from when we were a type 1 district.
But that comes from school taxes, that does not come from the municipal.
It's generated through the municipality.
No, it comes, if you follow the money, it's coming, look at the difference between what the school levy is that comes into the municipality and the school levy that is sent to the school. The type 1 levy comes out of the school tax levy. As it should.
I will confirm.
I guarantee you.
Okay.
I promise you.
Okay.
I'll show you too.
Okay.
Because you can see that on the budget. You just need to look at the budget the year before and that year. The municipality does not pay for that.
Okay.
They pay for that as school tax.
I don't expect anybody to read this. We're going over and you could zoom in on it if anybody is interested in looking at this slide from home. But basically, these are all the departmental appropriations from mayor and council to town clerk, all the way down to building department construction code. 5-year look back. And this is what it looks like in a pie chart. Where does the money go in terms of departmental appropriations? So about 56% of your municipal tax dollars going towards public safety. If you were to throw in, as Eileen mentioned before, police and fire retirement system, it's probably closer to 60% or over 60% of your local property tax dollar going for public safety services. There's also in the budget statutory, unclassified, and miscellaneous appropriations. What the heck does that mean? We have debt service. So our debt service in 2025 was approximately $8.6 million. Police and fire retirement system, pension payments was approximately $8 million. Our school debt service, as just mentioned, was approximately $7.8 million. Our employee group health insurance was approximately $7.1 million. That is a prorated number because that number reflects the amount of what's called Chapter 78 contributions that employees pay into it. So it decreased from that $10 million figure, it decreased it. And we also charged the utilities for the health insurance that the employees get through the parking utility and the water and sewer utility. There is a reserve for uncollected taxes at $3.8 million. Capital improvements $2.8 million. Public employee, that's public employee retirement system. That's the pensions for civilians at $1.7 million. And then Social Security at $1.5 million. I listed everything that was generally above $100,000. But that's what this looks like. And it's not, these are things that are not attributed to any one particular department. So what does that look like graphically? Departmental salary and wages are probably about 41% of the budget. Departmental operating expenses is approximately 22% of the budget being a little over $100 million. And then the next largest pieces of the pie, debt service, the PFRS pension, school debt service, and employee group health benefits. So what is the schedule? So the annual debt statement had to be completed by January 31st. That's completed. The unaudited annual financial statement has to be completed by March 10th. That is currently in the works. And we are anticipating budget introduction for a little bit more than a month from now on March 17th. So the next part of the presentation is on the property revaluation. So I'm not going to read this. Basically, the Township of Montclair was ordered by the Essex County Board of Taxation to conduct a revaluation of property. So what does that mean and why do we have to do it? So market values or property values typically change over time as either zoning changes, or if somebody fixes up their house is more valuable, or if somebody lets their house go and it's less valuable. And over a 10, 20, 30-year period, for example, some houses appreciate more and have more fair market value, and other houses depreciate more and have less market value. So our property taxes are based on a fair market value or a true market value. So every so often, we have to update those values, go out and actually inspect all the properties. This is not a way of getting more money from the residents. The pie chart that I showed you at the beginning of the slide with the school portion and the county portion and the school portion, we will not overall get more money at the end of the day than we're getting today. However, it will be how the pieces of the pie are apportioned based on property values will change slightly over time. So this was the order and I included this in here for assuming it's going to be posted to our webpage for anybody who's interested. This was the order in 2024 by Essex County Tax Board that we had to do the reval. This was the actual resolution of the Essex County Tax Board. I don't expect you to read this now, but if for anybody who's interested, Essex County Tax Board ordered us to have a reval completed by October 1st, 2027, so a little over a year and a half from now. This provides, I'm not going to read this, this provides an overview of revaluations. This was prepared by the New Jersey Department of Taxation. And this is a frequently asked question primer on revals. So what is the schedule for the property revaluation? The last revaluation was completed in 2018. On May 6, 2024, Essex County Board of Taxation ordered that a new reval be taken place. So the next steps, we have to update our tax maps. Those tax maps have to be submitted to I believe it's the New Jersey Department of Taxation for approval. That's a process. It's an iterative process that usually takes 3 or 4 times before the state will sign off on it. We're expecting to have approval by the state of New Jersey in fall of this year, 2026. Once the tax maps are approved by the state of New Jersey, then the property inspections will begin, which we are anticipating to be fall of 26. By order of the County Tax Board, the reval has to be completed by October 1st, 2027. And the new valuations will go into effect for the 2028 tax year. That's all I have. Any questions?
Can I just mention something
Sure.
in terms of your goals that we've discussed here, in that legally, when health insurance goes up this much, we are allowed to take at least a portion of that over the 2% levy cap. That can be considered an exemption to the levy. Given where we already are in Montclair, I know you have it as a goal to keep it at 2% and not take those exemptions. So I just want to say, you know, that's going to be difficult, but I really do feel like we can look at that number. We're lucky 13, I guess, or unlucky 13 in the state, which means essentially probably in the whole country, that is a goal of yours, is to keep it at 2%, not using a lot of our fund balance, you know, not
No,
right.
no,
So
not using fund balance. The one-time gimmicks are not advisable. So the Government Finance Officers Association recommends having 2 months worth of spending in cash reserve, which comes out to about 16.66%, where our surplus was at about $15 million. So we're right about there, which is a healthy surplus. So you generate surplus and then you use surplus. So I believe we had used $8 million. So the idea is to not use more surplus than you generate. So if we used $8 million of surplus last year, the idea is to basically not use more than $8 million this year. And then the overall, per this local finance notice and New Jersey state law, it's a 2% cap on the tax levy. You can go over that. The governing body, the mayor and council, would have to adopt an ordinance for a cost of living adjustment. I believe it would go to, we can go up to, I think it's 3.1%. For a cost of living adjustment. That actually has to be introduced and approved, or at least approved before that ordinance has to be approved before the budget is approved for the year.
I would just make one other comment for the public, in that, you know, you referenced the local revenue, because again, there's not magic money coming from anywhere. And so one of the things this council did last year is we really looked at updating fees, you know, that hadn't been updated in 20 years or more. And again, the reason we're to do that is not because we're trying to nickel and dime people. It's really because you're going to pay it you're going to pay it somewhere. So you want to sort of make your local revenue and the fees reasonable and updated to 2025, 26 money, so that, you know, you're covering those kind of costs, and again, relieving the taxpayer of having to pay it. So I just wanted to, when people see us looking at fees like construction, you know, the fees, it's really because we're trying to keep this balance of the local revenue at least equal to inflation.
Everything we do has to be cost effective and financially responsible. And you're right in that we're not trying to nickel and dime property owners or homeowners and who are paying extraordinarily high property tax bills. But if you're able to implement fees that non-residents pay, like parking fee increases, or even, you know, building department increases, or things of that nature. Even I was surprised to learn, and you may recall this, when film companies come into town and request that streets be closed, from my understanding, there's no application process, or there's no application fee. So, you know, the film companies are getting a pretty good deal. Like they're getting a local film permit at a very reasonable cost. They're, in many cases, closing streets, which is inconveniencing residents and homeowners, and they're not paying their fair share towards that inconvenience. So maybe that's something that the mayor and council would consider looking into.
So this is really important, that to be sure that the municipality does not pay the type 1 school debt. So In 2024, the school tax levy was $138,400,005, and the local tax levy that gets remitted to schools, $130 million. Those $8.5 million, they stay here. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how type 1 debt works. That is like that everywhere. But it took me a while to understand this because in 2020, when our former mayor was campaigning, he said the pilots were okay because the municipality was paying that type 1 debt. And that was a lie. And in 2023, I had a conversation with the CFO, and she promised me and guaranteed to me that that I am correct. And when I trace this money from the municipal UFB to the school's UFB, I'm absolutely correct that the type 1 debt comes here and stays here as it should. There's nothing wrong with it. The municipality just cannot claim that it's paying for it out of municipal funds. Thank you.
Okay, so I appreciate the depth of this presentation and the knowledge you have and the transparency to the public. My big issue is I believe the number was $43 million goes to the county. Is that correct? About $43 million?
39.7.
Yeah.
$40 million.
And from what I know, there's absolutely no oversight from the town to the monies that were given to the county. It's a black hole. No one here, no financial person here is going to, as far as I know, the meetings that they have is studying the budget, is coming back to the town with information on the budget, is trying to influence the county budget. It's just we give them the money and we have no idea what they do with it. And then you go to things that are run by the county and they have a zillion employees running these things. And you wonder, like, what's the patronage that's going on here? It's just, to me, it's outrageous, really, that we have maybe once a year some guy comes and talks a little bit about what's going on in Essex County, but that's about it. So I feel there needs to be some kind of effort to see what's going on in the county, how can we influence that amount, if at all, or at least understand where it's going, because I just think that's a black hole and we have no idea what's going on. And it's $43 million that taxpayers in Montclair are paying. You don't have an answer, I know, but what can we do about that? Is anybody else outraged, or is it just me?
It's a lot.
But I think if we had some concerted effort with people going to these commission meetings and saying, what's going on? If you had a group, we always talk about having volunteers here in town looking at this, that, and the other. Let them go and look at Essex County and see what's going on there. Because I really suspect. They're a suspect to me. I don't know. It's not funny, I don't think. I just think it's outrageous. Well, it has been the last... No, I know, but is there somebody beside? I mean, maybe I should take it on. I just feel like somebody needs to take it on. Yeah,
Carmel,
understand.
Let's look at the budget. They do publish their budget,
Right.
so why don't we? I know, but
Yeah.
let's start there.
I know that's definitely a start, and I think raising the issue with people is, as I tried to do, is also a start. Maybe there's other people out there who really feel that's pretty outrageous that we spend $43 million and no one knows what's going on with it or tries to influence to reduce it.
Carmel, I think you said that before. Someone said that, and when you said that, I made it my business to find out, what the process is. So first of all, people can go if they want to know, and people can participate openly if they'd like to participate. So for as much as my schedule will allow, I've been to some of the meetings since it came up earlier, because I did not know, like you, what the process is, or that it's just because people didn't publicly let us know that that was something they wanted to do. So I anticipate on trying to get there as much as my schedule will, and I find it very interesting, and we do have a voice there.
Well, we pay a corruption tax in New Jersey, so let's just, you got to be honest about the facts. So, Councilor Birmingham, you had the slide about the cost of personnel, and you said that the cost is flat, but my question is the number of employees consistent over that 2020 to 2025 period?
Sorry, I'm sorry if it wasn't clear. That was the cost per employee. So it wasn't, it was like every employee that you hire, this is what it would have cost. And so it wasn't an aggregate, it was per employee.
Oh, okay.
When you
thanks.
included their salary, pension, and health insurance.
Okay, got it. And Manager Marks, you said that everything we do has to be cost effective. So the question I have is, on Tuesday night, there was a resolution approved for a $2.3 million contract with Millennium. And you said that, and it says on the resolution that it doesn't have, the contract doesn't have to be bid, and that Millennium is state approved. Now, to me, the fact that something is state approved, that's not like a gold seal. You know, it's not really meaningful, because we know how corrupt the state is. So my question is, was there any due diligence performed as far as comparing the cost that Millennium's proposal to any other vendor?
There was another vendor who I had in. We had suffered at least 3 network outages, which included telephones, our computer network, including police and fire radios that were down, and even the 911 system. We had another vendor come in to give a quote. That other quote was not as competitive as the Millennium proposal. And to be frank, there was some urgency, because I did not want to suffer another outage like the 3 that we've had in the last 6 months. So they are a state contract vendor. They're also pre-qualified under numerous county purchasing cooperatives throughout New Jersey. As there was some urgency, and I did recommend. I still stand behind my recommendation to go with them.
So you're saying there was some urgency, so have they started work already?
No. It was
Yeah.
just approved on Tuesday. Today is
I
Thursday,
understand
so that was
that.
2 days ago.
I
We haven't
just
haven't
think
executed a contract yet.
that regardless of urgency, if we're making decisions about $2.3 million, I think we should have shopped it. That's my opinion.
I understand.
Okay. And then number 3, with respect to the property revaluation, I think everybody needs to understand that any property that has a pilot, their pilot will not change based on this reassessment. And why is this so important? If you look at 2 South Willow, the cost to build 2 South Willow was $80 million. It's assessed at $46 million. And even the tax on the assessment, which was half of its cost, right, in round numbers, the tax is over the 3-year period, 2022 to 2022, 23, 24. I think I only had the 3 years. Anyway, it was $1.7 million that Montclair left on the table, because that developer, Brian Stoller, walked away with a $20 million profit. And I'm going to do an analysis on Alistair, because that property also changed hands in the last couple of years. And so you only have to look, stretching from Pine Street all the way up to Valley and Bloom, there are multiple properties with pilots. And when we do the reassessment, their pilot payment will not change. And so the burden on the homeowners is, it's not fair. And that's why there shouldn't be any more pilots. Now, furthermore, you know, the town, we're talking about everything we do has to be cost effective, but the township assessor is getting paid based on a full-time position, and he does not work for Montclair full-time. All right, based on the Oprah request that I submitted, his average annual hours are about 300 hours a year. That's like a day a week, plus he works for 4 other municipalities part-time. So that is not cost-effective, and that's...
Anybody else? I actually have a question. It will not be a comment, promise. So, I was really shocked that both at the schools and municipalities and counties, health benefits were going up by 36% last year. Because in the private sector, it's going up by 6 to 8%, and it's a crisis. It's an emergency, and it's a real big problem. So I've started looking at why, and I don't have the answer. Like, I just have more questions, and I know you did a lot of work on this, and you worked really hard to get us out of the state plan. So you're probably familiar with the changes that the state made to their state plan. They brought the unions to the table. They forced them to negotiate. In March, the schools are forced to negotiate with their unions to try to find a more sustainable path forward. Why do you think the municipal health benefits are so unsustainable? Like, they're just growing so much faster than everything else. How much of it is exceedingly generous benefits that just don't exist in the private sector? How much of it is a pool that is a more risky pool? You know, if we did what the state did, because the reductions were really minor, would it become more sustainable? Because those reductions seem highly acceptable. Like, I would take those reductions any day to just not have a cost share that is, because the municipal cost share for employees is high. So if I were a municipal employee and I was looking at this kind of cost share increase, I wouldn't be happy about it either. I would take the reforms that the state offered because they would not change, the generosity that I experience. So I really wonder what you learned and what you can teach us about it. Sorry, that was very long.
That's a compound question. So I'm not an actuary, so I can't get into the specifics. From what I understand, like 1 in 7 or 1 in 8 adults in New Jersey, probably nationally, is on a GLP-1, and they're extremely expensive, and they're totally covered by the state health benefits plan. That's a cost driver. The networks of like Robert Wood Johnson and the other healthcare systems are stronger today and have more market leverage today than they did years ago, and they demand higher prices from the state health benefits plan. They've edged out competition. That's another cost driver. And then finally, health benefits are a negotiated benefit. So I understand and admire that the state was able to bring the state employees' unions to the table and to negotiate those benefits down. But as a negotiated benefit, you have to have 2 parties that are in agreement. We have 7 collective bargaining units in the township of Montclair, and I look forward to having those conversations with those bargaining units. But we cannot, as a municipality, as an employer, impose benefit reductions on employee labor unions. So every employee, this is a public meeting. Every employee has rice notice rights. The particular employee who she is referencing has not been noticed, so I would just decline from addressing that question. If the mayor and council would like to send a rice notice to any employee, and we could discuss them either in closed session or an open session, but now is not, it's inappropriate for us to discuss individual employees.
I will just add to the health, if you, I believe it was the State Treasury Department did a May 2025 white paper on the state health benefit plan and just the reasons behind a lot of this cost increase here. And as you said, Mariana, it's very difficult for employees too. It is not,
I can speak to that just real quick.
yeah.
The graph that you had up there before-
I'm sorry. On the graph you had up there earlier that showed the healthcare costs in the green on that bar graph, did that take into account the employees' contributions?
Yes,
So
yeah.
your share of that had our 35% reduced
Yeah.
from that?
Yeah.
In what you were showing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is just so, it is so
that was
much
just
higher
On your,
than
on
it
your,
was.
not on the manager's one, on
Right,
the one that
yeah.
you had proposed earlier,
Yeah,
on your
it-
draft?
yeah,
Where you had
it's just-
pensions and
yeah,
contributions.
Yeah.
'Cause
And it's
This
just,
is, I'm sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
The green piece of pie is prorated. So the aggregate cost for the town for employee health benefits is approximately $10 million. If you subtract out, and this entire presentation in terms of the budget has been on the general fund, not on utilities. So I didn't include anything about the parking utility, the water utility, the sewer utility. Why is that important? Because the parking utility, water utility, and sewer utility all pay their pro rata towards their expenses. So their the utilities healthcare costs are reduced by that $10 million. The $10 million reduced by the utilities and the Chapter 78 employee contributions. So
Understood.
it's $7 million is the net.
Got it. Understood. Thank you for clearing that up.
Sure.
Okay. I can keep going. I mean, I have a lot more to say. If I can just a couple little things real quick. I know there's been a directive, and I'm here as representative of the department that I work for at the fire department. Is there a target number from the finance committee of how much you'd like to save from just the fire department? I mean, on the average household in Montclair, it's about $3.10 per day for the fire department. I mean, if my numbers check out, I'm sure I'll be questioned on that as will, but on the average tax bill for the municipal, I think it works out to be about that share. But we can check it. No, $3.10 per day per taxpayer household. It's about $1,150. Around $1,150 for the average house tax. That's one thing. And then I just also like to include, as people see things, just to get some stuff off of my members' idea platform is, as everyone knows in the room, right, we do not get Social Security, right? Firefighters, we're not part of any of that system, so everybody knows that as well. And that we contribute 10% to our pension system, just something that, maybe the public doesn't always know. Sometimes people come up to the podium and they speak some things and they're not 100% accurate. And as well as on the state average, the firefighter collects about 7 to 8 years of their pension after they retire. So the health benefit is something that is very sacred to us, and it is a negotiable item. And the reason that we only collect 7 or 8 years of our pension, I can tell you the reason why. Okay. And that's a national. It's an occupational hazard. We pass away, and that's it. I have 2 members, with ALS right now, and we have a lot of other challenges that go on through the department, and that's a state statistic. So it's nationwide fact. Yeah.
Actually, this is for you, this question. And I, this is the change. These are the changes that the state negotiated. And I just want your opinion on how bad it would be for employees to accept those changes. And no judgment on that. And also, I don't know how good it would be, because I don't know how much savings is in that, but it helped the state reach a level of sustainability. It didn't become cheap. So they imposed a coinsurance of 50%, but only on out-of-network provider procedures that were being done in certain facilities that are more expensive. So that was the big one. Another one is they created a program for people who are on GLP-1. So you enter this program, which is like Weight Watchers, if you're going to be on GLP-1. And that slows down the uptake and slows down the increase in costs. Those are the big difference. And then it increased copay, but only for out-of-network. So those, and as it became more sustainable, the cost share also became smaller. Is the cost share a big burden for you? Because I look at the health insurance sheet on the budget, and I think the cost share for municipal employees is quite high. So if I were you and I saw a proposal like this, I would want to find out how much it would save me on the cost share. So I'd like to hear how you feel about it.
We're open to look at anything. That's all my comment is on that, you know? It's a negotiable item, and I can, you know, you're not telling me what the premium is right there, and I'd have to look at the whole comparison.
I'll find everything and send to the manager.
Thank you.
So Trump's undoing of the endangerment clause and basically killing the EPA aside, climate change is real. How much of our budget would you say is going towards climate resilience and implementing our climate action plan, and will go to implementing our sustainability master plan amendment of that chart? Or like, if we're paying $3 a day for a fire department per household on average, how much are we paying for environmental conservation and climate resiliency per day?
So probably less than 1%. Maybe it's 1/10 of 1%.
A couple of cents?
It's probably a couple cents, yeah.
Right. So as an environmentalist, as someone who does believe science and who also believes the Pentagon, climate change is a massive risk. And I know that Montclair alone is not going to solve that. But if essentially none of our municipal budget goes towards climate resiliency,
Correct.
we're going to have a big problem in terms of safety and security. And I can see how constricted you are with that. And it's not unusual for the environment and for climate resiliency to come absolutely last, if at all, in priorities. But for me, if I represent, what was the math we did of each one of us representing a certain thousands amount of people, if I'm representing not just myself, but the people who will inhabit my house when I move in 2028, when the taxes are just way too high for me, there will be another family who moves because it's an affordable house with children, and those children are going to be confronted with an environment that has not been maintained, much like our infrastructure, our stormwater infrastructure as well. So how does somebody in your position plan for that with no budget?
So to credit the mayor and council, they created a Department of Sustainability back in December. So this will be the first budget that actually has a line item for Department of Sustainability. You know, it's not going to be what you want. It's probably not going to be, you know, it's definitely not going to be what's needed, but it's the first step.
Yeah.
Right.
But most of all, any kind of big changes like stormwater infrastructure will need to happen with grants and things from the state, because we're not going to be able to fund that.
The town about a year ago funded a study, or I think it was a state-funded study for a stormwater utility. There were a lot of properties in town that are either nonprofits or churches or the state university or whatever that don't pay property taxes, but they contribute to flooding and, you know, stormwater runoff and non-point source pollution, et cetera. So if the town were to consider a stormwater utility, not many towns in New Jersey have. There's probably less than half a dozen. But if the town in the future were to consider a stormwater utility, that's one way of funding green infrastructure improvements and, you know, mitigate against, climate change and you know, urban heat island effect and a lot of the impacts of climate change.
Yeah. Thank you. I just feel it's important to underscore that while we talk a lot about like security and safety, there's one huge threat coming, and it's real, and it's here now, and we're doing nothing really. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you. I think we spend a huge amount of time in Montclair speaking past one another because we don't have the same baseline understanding of the facts that we're talking about. And so, you know, what Councillor Birmingham took the time to do in terms of explaining background and everything that you're doing, at least gives us a vocabulary to start with. And it was incredibly disheartening under the last council with Mayor Spiller to hear these budget meetings where the questions that were being asked were like, what is your wish list of items that you'd like to add? And so seeing you come from this place of being realistic about things needed to be cut and holding ground when you're clearly going to be under an immense amount of pressure not to, it's appreciated very much by the residents.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, I just would like to support Ms. Avery's, request for information about our tax assessor. It's interesting if what she's stating is true, that he spends so little hours and gets paid so much. I know you
again,
can't do it.
This is not. It's inappropriate for me to
No,
comment
no.
on it.
I just
you have,
at
you have
some
a right
point.
to.
Yeah.
You have a right to, make your comments, but it would be inappropriate for me to respond.
If you'll have me, I have 3 questions. You've spoken about 5% budget reductions townwide. Why is the fire department the first in line to receive their cuts?
So the budget itself is due March 17th. So I could have waited until March 17th, but there's pressure every day to hire additional firefighters, and so I believe in 2025 we spent about $1.75 million on overtime in the fire department. So as we've had recent retirements and attrition, there was a call to hire to backfill those people who had retired, the firefighters who had retired, to manage those expectations. Why was the timing the way it was? We commissioned the study in May 15th, thereabouts. The chief and I went back and forth over the data with the consultants over a 6-month period. We had a draft of the report in December. There were substantive comments. Went back and forth. The study was finalized by mid-January. The study was presented at the Finance Committee meeting, the members being here. And it was basically, from my estimation, time was of the essence because one of the concerns that the consultants had was that we are staffing with 70 firefighters. We are staffing 5 apparatus at 16 or 17 minimum daily staffing per day. And the consultants were concerned that some of the firefighters who were working double shifts or working more than 24-hour shifts were getting burned out. It didn't make sense from both a public safety perspective and a financial perspective to staff five fire apparatus, especially there were 3 recent retirements, I'm sure you're aware of. So we went from 70 to 67. We're currently advertising for firefighters right now to backfill those 3 recent retirements. But it didn't make sense to continue staffing 5 apparatus if it wasn't 100% necessary. And the more firehouses you have, the more fire apparatus you have, you're going to have a safer community. But it's a policy decision of the mayor and council to determine, what's the right level of safety for the community. A lot of people would love a cop on every corner, but the town can't afford a cop on every corner. So, with that in mind, what is the right level of protection?
Would you be surprised to learn that an increase in the staffing, the table of organization, would actually save the town money?
This is the 3rd municipality that I've worked for, and I've heard that same argument from the 2 previous municipalities, from bargaining units, and I'm still waiting to see convincing numbers.
I would be happy to provide those to you.
Okay, I look forward to it.
Me too. I have more follow-up questions, if I could finish.
Sure.
Thank you. What is the actual real cost savings represented with the proposed reductions?
Probably on an annualized basis, probably between $750,000 and $1 million. Because we're already 2 months in the year, it's going to be less than that. That's an estimate.
Are you able to provide how you arrived at those numbers?
I could, those are back of the envelope calculations. We could fill in the detail.
I'd be very happy to hear that.
Okay.
I'll yield my last question.
So, Glen Ridge has the same fire department we have.
Yes.
They pay $118 per resident. We pay $399 per resident. I feel like a chump. I feel taken advantage of. I think it's absolutely unfair and disrespectful, and frankly, there's no excuse for this. So we really need to make cuts to the fire department until Montclair residents are paying as much as Glen Ridge residents. It's completely unacceptable. In addition, we are not the most expensive fire department. Absolutely not. There are Milburn, Bloomfield are more expensive than we are. But we're in the top 9th percent. And we're giving services away to Glen Ridge. And we pay a lot more than they do, right? Those guys live in all volunteer towns. And then they come here and tell, yes, you live in West Caldwell. So he comes here. He lives in West Caldwell and tells me that this is not an attack. If you want to have credibility and come here and tell me that I'm not paying enough for fire services, you need to pay as much as I do. The day you put your money where your mouth is, I'll respect what you have to say about increasing the amount I pay for the fire department. Until you pay as much as I do, you have no credibility.
Really?
Yes,
That's your position.
absolutely no credibility.
Is that the position of the governing body?
This is no, I can only speak for myself. And as a taxpayer,
I would just ask that
who's taken
we
advantage
be
of.
respectful of each other, please.
This is respectful. He pays a lot less than I do, and I'm offended. This is not an attack.
Sounds like an attack.
No, start paying. You're telling me to pay more? Pay as much as I do first.
Are there any other questions?
Oh, I had one more question. The DCS roof replacement. There was a increase in the not to exceed of $94,000 at the January 27th council meeting, claiming it was for change order number 1. So I submitted an Oprah request. Change order number 1, it's not for the roof. It's for leaking windows for $18,000 and change. So I don't know if I didn't get the right papers back with my Oprah request, or, one thing that was very interesting, and the reason why I submitted an Oprah request is because $94,880 is exactly 20% of the contract amount. So to me, as an auditor, not increase and not to exceed, probably need to look at it. An exact amount, suspicious. And then the paperwork doesn't match. So process is everything. If you don't follow processes, if people are taking shortcuts, mistakes get made, and because people aren't following processes, the mistakes don't get caught. And that really, it's tone at the top. And we had a manager here for quite some time who ran things very loosey-goosey. I'm being very diplomatic, right? And we cannot achieve cost effectiveness. Here's another quote. Every dollar spent in every department has to be absolutely necessary. So we're not going to get where we need to get unless there is a change in the culture of the township. And I would like to know how leaking windows got put through as a change order on a new roof contract.
I'll have to look into the specifics and get back to you.
All right, thank you.
Any more questions? All right. I think that concludes our presentation and our hearing. So thank you very much for coming, and have a wonderful evening. Safe travels. Safe trip home. Have a good night, everybody.